Hello, my name is Matt Bird, and I want to welcome you to the PublishU podcast, where we feature the real life stories of authors from around the world. Today, we're joined by David Warren from Lincoln, who's written a book called Better Than This. David, you are very welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. A privilege to be here.
Now, you're retired, is that right?
Yes, I know I don't look the age, but yeah, I'm officially retired.
It's hard to
Um,
believe.
it is
And,
almost impossible to, isn't it?
well,
But
I
there we
mean,
go.
what does retired life look like for you, David?
Playing lots of bowls,
Okay. Are you any
looking
good?
after, no, I'm not very good at that. Indoor bowls, looking after grandchildren, family, writing a bit,
Ah,
doing a bit of churchy stuff, but not very busy right now, which is good, which is
I
good.
sounds wonderful. And how many grandchildren have you got?
I've got three. Yeah,
Oh,
6 year old and a 2 year old and a 7 month old.
oh my goodness.
And
Wow.
then an adopted one as well, which who's we're unofficially grandparents to a fourth as well.
Wonderful. Love it, love it, love it. So, David, when did you first think about writing a book?
Oh, when I was about 10 years old.
Really? So just a
Yeah,
couple of decades ago.
well, about last year. Yeah, sitting in a primary school, I would write every week. We'd have a free writing session. And I would just go into my little football world at the time and create these stories, and endless books of nonsense would come out. So yeah, so that's where it all really began. And ever since, I've always wanted to write a book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's happened.
It has. It has happened. And no, I don't want to go into this now, but my sense it won't be your last. But that's a conversation for another occasion.
You may well be right.
So, what is the story that you've told? What is the message you've communicated in your book, David?
Yeah, basically, I fell into a scene which, in my churchy world, which I didn't really realize existed or was so powerful, which was the whole area of church abuse, spiritual abuse, that kind of thing. And I fell into it for one or more reasons, and suddenly reflected on my life, having been a pastor for 40 years, reflected on 40 years. Um, and so and then I read a book about psychological safety. Just for fun, and that all connected. And so what really happened was a whole number of things came together that I thought, oh, I could write my story, but integrate it into a kind of, please, can we do this thing called church better?
Yeah.
And that was the root of it.
Yeah. And it's interesting, David, because what you raise here within your context, actually, these kinds of um, psychological manipulation, stroke abuse can happen in any organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It could happen in any organization, charity, group, business, church, anything. I just think with the church one, you kind of get into people are pretty committed to it and have a passion about it. So sometimes it goes deeper and um, more painful in one way because of the real passion that's involved with the whole thing, which
Yeah.
is good, but also has a flip side.
Yeah. And I guess people can play the God card, which is
All the
another
time.
lever of manipulation.
Yeah, yeah, all the time. And God has told me, God has said, and by the way, let's back it up with some vague Bible verse from Ecclesiasticus or something. But it's kind of like that's the way it works. And
Yeah.
and yeah, sort of fell into that,
Yeah.
Matt. And
So, in one sense, it's a heavy subject, a difficult subject,
yeah,
but I love the title for your book, Better Than This, because actually what you're advocating for is a better way of doing things. And and,
yeah.
and, and what, David, would you say? How can we become better at this?
Well, yeah, in the book it talks about three things. I think it's only touching a much deeper well, if you like. But I talk about having wise theology, just not right theology. And we need wisdom, not just rightness. Psychological safety, which is the whole theory of people feeling that they can say things, speak up about things, ask questions, make mistakes, fail without fear. And finally was this whole thing about courageous followership, where we need people who are courageous to speak out, because so many of the things, the stories that are told in this book, and sadly internationally, sadly often people knew what was going on and were unable to or unwilling to or whatever to speak out,
Yeah,
and until it all went bang, and
yeah,
then of course it's too late and people get deeply hurt. So that's the behind the book is those the positive thing is, hey, this we here's a load of stories, but here's how we can do better.
yeah,
And those three things kind of connect.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, and give it. Can you give us an example that's not too sensitive, but give us an example of something you've seen or experienced?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a bit tricky in one way because people pretend that they're Poirot or Miss Marple and try and investigate where this story comes from or who, and then you get yeah. So I would say, out of the numerous ones, I think would be the stories how interns are treated in some settings and manipulated there. So two or three have talked about how the church demanded so much of them, um, to the point where they had a form of breakdown, but then the breakdown is blamed on their own weakness, and therefore their mental anxiety they've got to battle through, they've got to fight through. So in the book, there's two or three of those where um, interns in a church setting have described how they were dealt with in a mental health
Yeah,
context.
yeah,
It's not really mental health; it's your weakness. That kind of. I don't think I've explained that very well, but um,
yeah.
that's a
No, I
general
understand.
thing.
Yeah, yeah. And so, what advice would you give an intern in that situation?
Get
I mean, just
out.
to follow through on this example.
Yeah, I would say get out, um, ASAP. Um, don't listen to nonsense. Talk to your doctor. Listen to your doctor or a professional, not your pastor. Um, and to be honest, I'd say get out,
Yeah,
uh, because it's so unhealthy for so many people to stay put. But there's so many dynamics that make that very difficult, like
yeah.
friendship. One girl reported that she she did get out, but the church then said to all her friends not to talk to her because she needed time to recover, and so she was pushed to one
Oh,
side.
yeah,
And that's sadly what I discovered in this whole journey was that was a common story, not just a one-off,
yeah,
which is devastating, really.
yeah, absolutely. So, David, I mean, you wrote your book in 100 days. Um, you know, d- what was the biggest obstacle you faced?
Oh, and still face, I think, will anybody read it? Is it worth, who am I to write such things?
Yeah,
Would be, because I'm just a retired pastor, teacher, kids worker type person, and who am I? Does that make sense? I've got
yeah,
no
yeah, 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 yeah,
connections. I've got
yeah,
no Instagram following. Well, I think I've got about 100 or something, but I don't have 22,000. I don't have the word apostle in front of me. So it's kind of like, who am I? That would
yeah,
be the biggest thing.
yeah.
Even
And
though
how
I'm
have you worked that through, David? I mean, I know it's one thing working it through intellectually and then working it through psychologically, but how have you tried to work that
A
through?
very
You
good
know, that
question.
question, who am I to write this book?
I,
What's
th-
your
I,
answer?
th- my answer was one, I'm passionate about it. I've
Yeah,
fallen into something that makes me tick. I love fixing things. I love putting things right. I hate hate
yeah,
injustice. So that's one thing. And the other thing is the encouragement from family and those people who had contacted me because I had no intention of writing a book like this. The book changed as I thought it through. Um, but people who told their stories really said, please, will you do this?
yeah,
And
yeah,
that was very powerful.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so actually that gave you the sense of
Yeah,
this is who I am,
yeah,
write this.
yeah. This
Um,
is, I can do this.
yeah,
I can communicate something that some people can't communicate for
yeah,
whatever reason.
yeah. And how did the Writing My Book course help you?
I think it focuses your attention as much as anything. It
Yeah,
kind of, I had lots prepared and outline done before I even joined the course because it was something by nature that the topic needed pretty
yeah,
careful thought and permission from people to write and all sorts of things. Um, but it one focused attention. Two, it kind of made you do it because you felt like a wally if you know what I mean. If you, yeah, other people are cheering you on and you don't want to. I didn't want to. I'm the sort of person who didn't. I'm not. I'm like, if I don't achieve this, I've kind of let myself down in front of all these other people. So there's accountability in the course, which I
yeah.
think is really important. And also, I think finally, the step by step approach is helpful because
Mm,
it kind of gets you moving.
mm.
Because you could easily write a book, try and write a book and go down a tangent,
Yeah, yeah.
and it stopped you going down blind alleyways, which are
Yeah,
very
so which
blind.
there are many.
Which are there? Yeah, I didn't realize how many there are until you do it.
So, David, now your book's published and it's
Yeah.
available around the world. I mean, how does that make you feel?
Um, like one, I feel I've achieved something. I've got a message out there. Two, I've done something I've always wanted to do, which is great. Three, very nervous because I don't, by the nature of it, I don't know what the feedback will be, and that could be interesting.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, a mix of stuff, Matt, but very excited,
yeah, yeah,
but it's a bit weird.
yeah. That's great.
It's a bit
And what
weird.
what would be your highest hope for the book and what
Um,
the impact it has?
if one or two churches or organizations or businesses or whatever, if one or two would just recognize that may they can do this better, we can be better than this,
Yes.
then it's achieved what it's I may never know whether that happens or not,
Yeah,
but that would be my hope that somewhere, somehow, that means change in a setting.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and, um,
Beautiful.
and one would be great, but it would be lovely to have 100 that
Yeah.
say
That'd be
that.
amazing, wouldn't
That would be
it?
cool. A
Well, thank you, David.
pleasure.
Thank you all for listening to the Publish You podcast, exploring the real life stories of authors from around the world. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please do subscribe for more. And if you're interested in writing a book like David, then do visit our website, www.publishu, the letter u.com. And thank you for joining us, and goodbye for now.
Thank you.